common theme I keep seeing in modern gaming is people complaining about things. Oh, sorry, that wasn't the end of the sentence. Complaining about things getting boring as they play. Right. Or perhaps it's after the fact, when they've consumed the product and find there's no overwhelming desire to go back to it, but they just can't pinpoint why. Usually they'll turn to the oracles of the internet, so assured in their wisdom, and be told that maybe they just need to take a break, that they're burnt out on gaming and they should do something else for a while. You know, like going outside. I've heard it's scary out there though at the minute. I'll get somebody to check it out for me soon and report back. Maybe for some of these stalled gamers, that's the answer right there. Simply hang up your controller and go do something else with your time. You're a grown adult with obligations and other potential age-appropriate activities. And even if you don't feel that way, the game isn't going anywhere. Unless it's a time-limited always-online title, of course. Isn't modern gaming wonderful? The other suggestion you see bandied about is to simply switch genre. After all, if you eat nothing but cake, you'll eventually get sick of it. Likewise with playing a single type of game. For most people anyway. There are some who can inexplicably play the same thing indefinitely. Now I want cake. My analogies are too tasty for their own good. Thing is, I said modern gaming rather than gaming as a whole, and that's a very deliberate distinction I'm making there. Much like with hardware stuff, such as display modes, color palettes, resolutions, and peripherals, control schemes and gameplay elements have been filtered through user testing over the course of the previous decades to determine the optimal, streamlined experience that the majority of people find enjoyable. This also applies to genres and subgenres too, and was taken apart by critics in the 2000s as consoleization of the PC gaming market. You see, a certain group of players are very particular about controls, and champion the PC as being one of a few systems left that doesn't exclusively operate with a controller. The keyboard provides them with a wealth of buttons to press, and the mouse is more precise than a thumbstick could ever hope to be. This also applies to specialized flight sticks and advanced steering setups too, for fans of flight and driving respectively. It might seem like elitism, and for some people it most assuredly is, but when we look back at the reality, we find that the complexities of certain games adds to the enjoyment of playing them. If you stuck 100 monkeys with controllers in a room, eventually they'd complete any console or controller supported game out there. Not so with keyboards. These devices offer more control and freedom and complexity for the player than a standard gamepad, and games of the past took full advantage of that, with all kinds of bizarre and wonderful gameplay becoming the sort that monkeys just couldn't complete, even if the reward at the end of it was a delicious cake. Nowadays, competing titles will largely operate in the same fashion, whether it's their layouts or gaming styles or visual effects, partly because most of them are developed on the same clutch of modern 3D engines, but mostly because there are now established expectations to meet, and should you deviate from those wildly as a developer, there's a genuine risk that the players won't come along with you for the ride. The same applies to the YouTube arena too, as I've found out. If I go wildly off tangent on one of my videos and cover something modern, like with my video on spiders that I nearly didn't publish, it'll get less views because that's not why people watch my channel. But if I stick to my guns too closely and repeat the same talking points over and over and over, people will eventually tire of listening to me too. And that's just one of the reasons why players are getting bored with modern games. They already know the controls and the gameplay from previously played titles, and once that's been mastered, they're simply going through the motions. The same motions that they've already subjected their brain to for hundreds if not thousands of hours already, where any change from the developers is carefully calculated within the confines of their specific genre. Just enough to make people feel like they're playing something different, but not enough to put them off. This might work just fine for a large chunk of the gaming world, but there are a not insubstantial number of people who aren't enamored by this approach. Sadly, not enough of them figure out why, often choosing to abandon their hobby outright instead, Whether it's the eye-popping graphics that your brain can't focus on, the audio compression and limiting that tires your ears out, the repetitive nature of the seen-it-all-before gameplay, or a mixture of all three, modern games aren't innovative for the most part, and their presentation means they need to constantly drip-feed you dopamine in order to keep stringing you along. Wait, Lawnie, I watch all your videos and I remember the one where you talked about the graphics. What's all this talk about audio? You've not mentioned that before. Well, no, I haven't. As someone with an extensive audio background, who also now mixes audio on a lot of DOS videos, let me tell you that the dynamic range for them is absolutely all over the show. From titles that are absolute masterpieces in sound engineering, to others which think that torturing your ears is a fun idea. Dynamic range compression is all about making the volume stay at a consistent level by compressing the waveform, so that the loud parts are closer in volume to the quiet parts and vice versa. Limiting prevents the audio from going over a specific peak in decibels by applying its own form of compression. The problem with all this is if there's no dynamic range, then your ear gets tired of listening to the same noise at the same volume constantly, and your brain starts to tune it out in response, like it would a noisy goldfish tank pump. It becomes background noise despite that not being its reason for existing, defeating its purpose entirely. Guess which games have the least dynamic range? That's right, it's the modern ones. This is a battle that the music industry has been struggling with for the last 25 to 30 years, as it became the way to do things going forward. And this is just a singular example. There have been all kinds of creators who have adhered to this line of thinking, and the gaming world in particular has suffered because of it. Want another example outside of audio? Football games from 1995. In 1995 on the PC, we had FIFA, Actua Soccer, Sensible World of Soccer, Kickoff, Goal, Man United the Double, Action Soccer, Striker, and several others on top of that. But more importantly, they each played a different game of football. They were distinct, both visually and in how they felt. In 2022, FIFA's gone with a whimper, replaced by something called EA Sports FC soon, which I'm sure will be great. Pro Evolution Soccer is no more, also replaced with the terrible eFootball, and both companies specialise in multiplayer-centric, heavily scripted gambling simulators with card systems at their forefront and mostly negative reviews on Steam. The rest of the pack? A clutch of indie titles that aren't even in the race. There's no real contenders anymore outside of EA and Konami, a corporate duopoly of sorts that can do as they please without fear of a third option snatching the marketplace from them. You've gone from having multiple ways of playing the beautiful game to having two ways that are comparatively similar and both terrible. And this is happening in every genre out there. If you have more games than ever before, you'd think there would be more ways to play than ever before. But because of the capitalistic concerns of their developers, there is less variety, to the point where it's essentially a glorified ballot swap in many cases. I'm not asking for everyone to be a revolutionary, that's not possible. If everyone was revolutionary, then being revolutionary wouldn't be revolutionary. I would instead like to see the variety of play and experimentation increase to the degree that was previously available. But that's only half the problem. The other issue is that the people creating just don't seem to be as creative anymore. Where's the modern day bullfrog? Where are the genre bending and blending titles with unique aesthetics that not only played but felt like nothing else? Maybe they already exist, but they're lost in the shuffle in the new releases section of the indies, buried under the weight of 100 palette swaps and bland copy fests and AAA heavy hitters that are all style over substance. The problem that new developers face is twofold: that seemingly everything has been done by their predecessors, resulting in most of them going, "Hey, I want to do that too," and spawning endless clones. And secondly, the audience has been conditioned so much at this point to expect things to be a certain way that they are in turn almost allergic to any deviation and throw a fit when they don't get their way like spoiled little emotionally stunted babies. Is there any way to fix this? Sadly, I don't have the answer. But there are new and upcoming frontiers in gaming that ingenuity can be applied to once more. thanks to virtual reality and full body haptic feedback and the like. Not my cup of tea currently, but my brother tells me it's great. I tried it several times, got motion sickness, and last time I nearly put my fist through my brother's monitor, so that didn't go very well. If you're tiring of modern gaming in 2D, there's always a new frontier for you to explore in due course. Let's hope the developers don't standardize that to death too quickly either. For everyone else, there's the classic games of the past, who weren't afraid to take risks and stand out. And the more of us that go back to them, the more developers will come to realize they need to bring the old ways back if they want to have any new ways in the future.